Two interesting guests today, and just a reminder, the great Dave Rubin will be here in the studio with me tomorrow at 3 o'clock Pacific time. But today it is Brad Skistimas. I never get to pronounce his name correctly. From 5 Times August, he's the solo singer, songwriter. Early 2021, 5 Times August releasing a series of protest songs taking aim at COVID-era regulations and lockdowns and all that. Reached #1 on several Amazon and Apple Music charts. He has a new single out now. You can see at 5 Times August on X. And after the break, there they are, Liars, Cheats, and Crooks. And this one actually upset me, so I want to talk to him about that. And after the break, we will speak to a friend of mine who was severely vaccine injured. We've interviewed him a couple of times. Last interview was about a year or so ago. I think it was with Dr. Ram Yogendra from COVIDLonghaulers.com. We're going to get an update from Howard, and we'll be right back with you after this. Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help. True
Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. I think you should do so. And a reminder that Dr. Amy alerted us that as you go up towards 1,000 milligram daily dose, some people get a little sleep disturbance. I am up in those doses because I am completely...
It keeps you up awake at night.
Maybe.
So take it in the morning.
Yeah, definitely take it in the morning. But it's energizing for some people. But the main thing is to try to change that oxidative state of the mitochondria so we improve our aging experience, or how we age. All right, so a couple things. Just Dave Rubin, as I said, in studio tomorrow at 3 o'clock Pacific time. And Brad Skistimas from 5 Times August is with us here today. You can follow him on X at 5 Times August. Let me see if I can find the new single. It's like Liars, Cheats, and whatever. Put it up there, Caleb, so I can read it off the screen. Liars, Cheats, and Crooks, which, boy, if you've been paying any attention to politics, that could be a lot of different people fall under that heading. He also has a website, IamForFreedom.com, and 5timesaugust.com. Brad Skistimas, welcome to the program.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. You betcha.
Yeah.
So I want to start this conversation with something I have been sort of contemplating for the last maybe 5 years, certainly. For the last 5 years, I'd say. And I don't have an answer. And so you're in the business of rock. And I always thought I was in the radio business for 30 years, and I was in, alternative and rock radio stations all over the country. And we were busy swatting off the right all the time. For years, we were anti-establishment. We didn't want to be restricted on what the content of the songs could be, what we could talk about on the radio. We wanted to be very real and very raw and very direct. And people needed that at the time. They didn't have the internet. They had nowhere to go. And so our thing was about helping people get into conversations and get information about things like reproductive health and health issues for adolescents, for instance. And the right had issues with that. I got into huge conflicts regarding the morning after pill, which I kept saying, this is not an abortion pill. This works like your birth control pill that you take every day. And if you want to get rid of all oral contraceptives, well, that's a conversation, that's rational. But to take aim at this one version of hormonal contraceptive because it's taken after you have intercourse makes no sense whatsoever. They all work the same way. So anyway, I was busy with that. And then lo and behold, in the last 5 years, things flipped on their ear. And people that I thought used to be sort of pushing back on establishment and speaking truth to power, whether it was Howard, radio disc jockeys like Howard, or whether it was rock station musicians or Neil Young's, gets flipped out about something Joe Rogan says, and leave Spotify, whatever he did, and then comes back, of course. It is the press who were supposed to be speaking truth to power. All of a sudden, these guys became the advocates for establishment and for power. And so I'd love your thoughts, now that I've given this gigantic preamble and you're going to tell me to shut up, what you make of all this? Because I can't come to a conclusion of what this was.
Well, I think it was an orchestrated effort that showed rock and roll's true colors. I mean, I grew up admiring, music from the 60s. I grew up with my parents' record collection. A lot of that anti-establishment, I mean, that was the whole thing, was being anti-establishment. Yeah. That was the essence of being rock and roll. And, by the time COVID rolled around, all of a sudden it flipped like we'd never seen before. I mean, we've seen... going all the way back to the 50s, Elvis, did his vaccine picture and told everybody to get vaccinated. So those little campaigns and endorsements have been around for a really long time. But all of a sudden, throughout COVID, I mean, you saw every single mainstream artist and record label and music venue, just like clockwork, get in line with government mandates and restrictions. I mean, Bruce Springsteen had segregated vaccination audience. Foo Fighters had segregated vaccinated audiences. Countless artists were segregating their audiences, and which couldn't be further than rock and roll, right? A music concert, in particular, is supposed to be a place where people can come together despite our differences, sing along, join in and just hang out together for a little bit and unite through music. And all of a sudden, you had these artists that were dividing us, that were supposed to be bringing us together. But on top of that, I mean, you had Neil Young drawing a line in the sand, right, between what Joe Rogan was saying and what he wanted to say. And he said, to Spotify, you can have Joe Rogan or me. And he lost that battle. He drew that line in the sand. And not only did he lose that battle, but it really shows who he is, because when you do that and you say, look, this information out there is dangerous and it's killing people, and I really believe that it's harming people, and you say you can either have me or him, and then everybody chooses Joe Rogan. Not only a few years later, then Joe Rogan comes back with a bigger, stronger deal, right? And now he's on even more platforms than Spotify. Right. Does Neil Young take his music off of the other platforms? No, he just puts it back, So how much did they really mean it? And that was a big awakening to me, standing on the outside as an indie artist. I don't have those super major platforms like they did, but it was heartbreaking to see, because these were my heroes. And now here we are.
They're showing their true. Did they change, or were they really like this underneath all along? That's the kind of interesting question, because to me, it has a flavor of narcissism, really. Let's call it what it is, which is, hey, I'm scared because it's me and you need to follow me. And when you think back on what they were doing, it was a pretty grandiose endeavor to take on the establishment, but you kind of admired it back at the time. But I wonder if this is the flip side of the same thing. Now that they are beginning to, here's what I see, that they're beginning to face their mortality from the standpoint of their aging, and this infectious disease sort of pushed their face to the mirror, and they became scared little old ladies, essentially. Yeah. And by the way, I've seen plenty of scared little old ladies with a lot more intestinal fortitude than these guys showed during the goddamn epidemic. And I feel like I don't want to insult little old ladies who might be a little fearful, in certain circumstances, because these guys were significantly worse than that. It was sad to see, as you say.
Right. Well, the big joke was, Rage Against the Machine now was raging for the machine. And I think it comes down to, you're looking at show business. It's show business. I mean, people have an image to keep up with. They have managers and record labels to please. And I think that's why you saw so few of them speaking out, because they were tied down. I mean, they're not these free-thinking, anti-establishment characters after all. They're just going. Well,
that's interesting, but
in rock and roll, right?
There's some of them were that way. So now let's give everybody a break too. At the beginning, I understand it was confusing. We were trying to do the best we possibly could, and everybody was doing their best. I would sort of say that of the Foo Fighters when they were sort of worried about everybody and everything. I didn't hear them. Did they continue down that path? I feel like they backed off that pretty early. Or am I getting that wrong?
Well, no. I mean, they had a vaccinated only show. I think a lot of artists did in bands, but the thing that you're not. But I get that in like December of 2020, but in 2021, now we're like, okay, now I'm worried about you. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing that you're not seeing is anybody coming back around to say I was wrong. And that's the big problem that I have, is that you saw everybody take part in it. You saw Pink and John Legend making Pfizer commercials and this whole big push, right? I have met injured individuals that, they got their shot. You had vaccine clinics at concerts, right there. You couldn't get in unless you got it or showed proof that you had a negative test. So you think about the pressure that they were involved in, this whole narrative to push people to get it. They might not be talking about it anymore, but they never have come back around to say, oh, you know what, I may have gotten that wrong. And that I think is the big problem with everybody in mainstream media. It's, if you're going to say I got it wrong, that's one thing, but then what are your actions after that too? I mean, I even called out, I got a lot of flack for this, but I called out Dolly Parton because she donated $1 million to the development of the Moderna shot. And so she's a very generous, philanthropic person, right? She's known for giving. But that shot has now ruined, countless lives around the world. Is she turning around to say, oh my gosh, how can I help those individuals? No. And so that's the problem, is nobody has, it's one thing if early on you were like, oh my gosh, this is scary. But it's another one to just go, whoops, well, won't talk about that.
Yeah. What do you got there, Caleb? People who, what are you putting up there?
So they did a study, and these are just some names of people who actually shared skepticism about the COVID vaccines. I didn't realize Nicki Minaj was one of them. Eric Clapton, of course, that was obvious, but I'm just looking for a list of names. Joe Rogan, of course. I didn't know about Nicki Minaj, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now, Amber Rose is saying that she's no longer brainwashed and she wants to come. Maybe she'll say apology. I don't know. But I don't want us to get it wrong either, okay? So I want to drill in a little bit on it because it is kind of complicated, right? It was unfolding in real time. I would say I was very enthusiastic. I felt like, our medical system will solve this. We're going to come up with some treatments and we'll come up with a vaccine. I just kind of knew it. I thought we would. Now, the mRNA thing was a new idea to me, but when did I get COVID? Is 2021 or 2020?
2020.
Okay, December 2020. So by December 2020, I was personally pretty enthusiastic about it. I had elderly patients that I'm convinced were helped through that period, because that alpha and delta thing, particularly for old people, particularly for people with multiple risk factors, it was no BS. I mean, it was a serious illness, and we were all trying to figure out what the best approach is. Now, mandates, here's where it got completely off the rail. And you tell me if you agree with this. To this day, we can't really offer fully informed consent because they've obscured us. They've obfuscated the information. Certainly at that point, we needed to give informed consent. So the idea
That doesn't work with mandates.
right. And then, right. Who needs informed consent when you have mandates? So the idea that the rock community was participating in mandates and demanding that you put something in your arm for which you do not have informed consent because it was not available. You couldn't give somebody informed consent.
Right.
That's kind of where, right around that time, is what I really have an issue with. And I'll pile on, and it was becoming clear quickly as Omicron came in, which it did fairly quickly, that the vaccine, natural immunity had value. The vaccines for younger people was sort of unnecessary, and they weren't protecting teachers or anybody else, or even the elderly. The kids were just not a source of transmission, and college kids in particular had no risk from the illness. So the fact that it was even mandated to young people, and young people is where rock and roll sort of exists, that's where they need to give the apology.
I remember you saying once they give it to a child and one child dies, they'll stop.
I did say that, and they didn't because
there was no data, like nobody was following up, and everything else was.
We couldn't get the data, and we still can't get the data. I saw some data the other day that said that there's like a 35,000% increase in problems in children with the vaccine. I don't know if that's true or not because the data is not being properly collected. But go ahead, Brad. Give me your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think that's the issue. I mean, no matter where you stand on shots, whether you think they were good or bad, there was never any right or justification to force this on people. And,
right.
There was
right.
never...
There wasn't an ethical... never a bioethical... There was never... Didn't meet bioethical criteria for mandates.
Right. And the amount of pressure to put on people through art and culture in particular... was absurd. And that was the dangerous side of things. I mean, it ruined people's lives. And there was the entire campaign, from offering free donuts and French fries to, getting into places, to going to do grocery store, to get your grocery shopping done. That's the major problem. I think most people that spoke out, that ended up speaking out like me, we have our opinions on things. We all have our personal stories, and we all do our own research, which was another thing that we were told not to do. We all come from a different place, but the fact that it was pushed so heavily by so many people that had a platform to be responsible with, that's the major problem that I have. That's why I continue to call out, a lot of my peers in the music industry and entertainment, because no one has since come back around. And I do this a lot on X. I'll pull up somebody's old statements and I'll be like, hey, do you still believe in what you posted back then in 2021 or 22? More often than not, they'll either block me or just ignore me. I called out Pink. I called out John Legend, and Pink ended up blocking me. Questlove from The Roots blocked me. Sebastian Bach, who is supposed to be, Mr. Super Rock and Roll. He's from, the 80s hair bands. And so, these guys are really showing themselves that they'd rather just look the other way than address what they took part in. And I think a lot of people, whether you are in entertainment or not, have to come to some sort of reconciliation with that.
What's interesting, as you say that, it occurs to me that these people with over-the-top opinions about vaccines that they didn't understand or medication that they just learned the name of the day before, think about it. they don't know shit about any of those things. And so for them to have like even a nuanced conversation like we're having about the efficacies of vaccine and stuff, they can't. They're not in a position to do so. So it'd be weird, it'd be hard for them to come back and sort of go, I was right on this, I was wrong on that, because who cares?
Yeah.
We shouldn't care about what you think or don't think. And you were doing the bidding of the man. That's what you should care about.
Right.
And maybe as a rock musician, and just go, hey, I got hoodwinked. I got hoodwinked by what do you call them? Crooks and liars?
Liars, cheats, and crooks, right? Yeah.
Liars, cheats, and crooks.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, there it is. That song got me a little bit because I've been worrying as I watch these videos, YouTube videos and X videos that I'm seeing of the extraordinary wealth that these people that spend time in our Congress accumulate. I worry that they're all in on this crazy take that, and they're all liars, cheats, and crooks, like you say here. And I don't know what to do with that. I mean, just every single one of them seems to be, a cheat, a crook.
Well, I think that the corruption is so blatant and obvious now that there's nowhere for them to turn. And so that's, we're seeing that a lot with Joe Biden right now, is that people for the last several years, I mean, even before he was president, were like, he's kind of going downhill. And the media, essentially conspired with, the government to say, look, he's in good shape. He's in his prime. He's doing great right now. And he's
sharp as a tack.
Sharp as a tack. He's really on point. And when you have things like the debate that, just happened and it's out there for the world to see, then they have nowhere to go but to pivot. So now they say, he is a little old and he is forgetting things and he's slow speaking and he's all the things that you've been saying. But that other guy, he doesn't tell the truth. And then it's like, he doesn't tell the whole thing's a show. So that's what the song's about. It's sort of just an anthem to say, we see it, we see it now. It's kind of out there and there's nowhere for these people to sort of to pivot to because it's obvious, and I said this the other day, but if the government and the media conspire to lie to you about the president of the United States' health, then why wouldn't they lie to you about your own health the last few years?
About anything, for that matter, anything they care to lie to you about, brainwash you about, gaslight you about, but the topic of the day is why would so-called anti-establishment rock musicians, why would the press, who's supposed to be speaking truth to power, why would they just fall right in line with the people in the elites, the people in power? I think it's because they're the elites too now. And the way the rock and roll musician was thinking about it, I didn't like those guys. Those guys with the horn-rimmed glasses and the white shirt and the skinny tie, those guys bothered me. Meaning, when I was growing up in England in 1952, I didn't like my dad, who was a World War II veteran and beat the shit out of me, or I didn't like my dad growing up in Wisconsin, whatever. Those guys, that generation I didn't like, but now it's my generation in power. Well, we're the good guys. We finally got here, so of course I'm going to line up with those guys, but they don't seem to understand, and you as a younger person can see it clearly. No, they're elites. They're ensconced. They're looking out for their own interest, and they are the opposite of what you're supposed to be all about.
Right. Well, especially those legacy artists like Bruce Springsteen or the Rolling Stones or something like that. I mean, these are the guys that I grew up with, and I can say this now as from the perspective of a 40-year-old, but those guys always seemed older than me. And it dawned on me, they were just kids in the 60s. They were in their early 20s, a lot of, and
That's
so
right.
they were anti-establishment. They were trying to take part in something bigger than themselves because they were kids, but they grew up to be businessmen at the end of the day. I mean, all those bands that you love, they're a t-shirt now, they're merchandise and marketing. Look at Kiss, for crying out loud. The most, Mr. Rock and Roll, Gene Simmons, is the biggest businessman in show business. So, he'll sell his name and likeness to anything. And he was, and he called you an enemy for not listening to the government. So what does that tell you?
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot of stuff to sell. He's got to show up and sell that merch.
Gene has never been bashful nor hiding his motivation and his whole idea about his musical career. I mean, he's been that. I can't fault him. He's been quite honest about it.
Gina's in the right age group to get the vaccine too.
That's true. But the ones that, I worry that the same character structure or personality structure that had them being so against the establishment of the time and as a 22-year-old grandiosely demanding that the U.S. get out of Vietnam or something, which I was all about too, but that's a pretty grandiose thing for a 22-year-old to demand that their government do. I mean, we got the same thing going on now. Look at what's her name from Finland? What's the green? Help me. No. The come on, somebody got to help me here. I'm going to look at here. These guys will help me on the.
Who's a Greenland artist?
No, not Greenland. Did I say Greenland? Finland.
Finland.
Did I say Greenland?
I think so.
What are they
boy,
saying?
Finland.
What is this artist doing?
Greta. What's her name? Greta. Help me, everybody. Can't remember her last name. I'm feeling more like Greta Thunberg. There it is. Greta Thunberg. Thank you.
Don't look at me.
She was 14 or 15 when she started telling the world how they should behave. It's like this is personality disorder, buddy.
Right?
And now that they're up and in charge, and
they don't have medical degrees,
and they're
right. They're musicians,
and their mortality is at issue. Oh man, do they run scared? Holy crap! I was really surprised to see that. It was. I think this was a time for courageousness and for standing tall, and they did exactly the opposite. It was falling in line. What are you doing there, Caleb? Were you doing something?
Oh, I just said, "How dare you?" I said
that was Greta yelling at us.
Yeah. Oh, Greta's yelling at us. I wonder if we ought to hear a little bit of the music of the new single after we listen to Greta yell at us. Let's have Greta yell at us
Let's
first.
hear some acapella.
And then no.
It was just a still. It's just a photo of her yelling at us, just to remind us that she's yelling at us.
By the way,
she's saying,
the ice caps are increasing. The islands that were supposed to go underwater now have more land. The polar bears are all coming back. The coral reef in Australia is blooming like it never has before. Those are all things I was very concerned about, and turns out, hey, we could correct those things. We could do something about that. That's the good news. We can when we acknowledge there's problems, we are pretty good at attending to them. So why be in a panic about these things and try to shut down the world for it? It doesn't make sense to me. But okay, can we hear a little bit of the song before we go to break, Caleb?
I can't play it on the show. I can't play it because we'll get takedowns.
Emily wants Brad to sing it. Emily said he should sing it.
I won't flag you. If you want to play it, I'm in charge of the YouTube stuff.
It's an automatic thing sometimes. Yeah, it'll might flag. Yeah, we tried this one time before, so that's why I don't even have it prepared. Yeah, they'll flag us.
Well, I suggest you all go after the show. You go listen to the singles that are up there.
What's the link?
Liars, Cheats, and Crooks. They just go to 5 times August on X at 5 times August. Where did 5 times August come from? What does that mean?
5 times August just came from my birthday, August 5th. I started 5 times August when I was 18, right after high school. So I had a whole big, long, pop singer-songwriter career before turning into a protest artist. So that was a whole other life before this era of stuff.
Crazy. All right, we're going to take a little break. I want you guys to pay careful attention to the people that support us here. We're going to be back with Brad am I saying it right? Skistimas?
Skistimas. Yeah.
Skistimas. I'll still screw it up, I promise. 3 times Skistimas. 5 times August is the Twitter handle at 5 times August, and be right back with you. The summer heat is underway, but Cozy Earth has the perfect bath products and bedding to keep your daily routine refreshing. At cozyearth.com/Drew, not Dr. Drew, just Drew, you can get 30% off with my discount code DREW. Plus, get free socks when you tell them that I sent you in the checkout survey. Cozy Earth's bath sheets and towels are crafted with advanced technology elevating the traditional design of towels with exceptional absorbency, durability, and comfort. Their revolutionary sheets are made from viscose, from bamboo, and are designed to keep you cool and comfortable no matter how high the temperatures soar. And with Cozy Earth, you are investing in quality and durability. All of their bedding and bath products come with a 100-night sleep trial and 10-year warranty. We have their sheets on our bed right now. Trust me, once you experience the comfort of Cozy Earth, you will never want to go back. Get 30% off at cozyearth.com, C-O-Z-Y, Earth, one word, cozyearth.com/Drew. Use promo code Drew. Don't forget to tell them I sent you in the post-purchase survey to get the free socks. That is cozyearth.com/DREW. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects. No chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using Capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted about what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
I ain't Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew. You want to spend the whole session talking about Dr. Drew?
There you go. Even you call him Dr. Drew.
And Lumen is the first handheld metabolic coach. This device measures your metabolism through your breath. It's on the app. It lets you know if you're burning fat or carbohydrates, gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also track your cycling as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations, adjust those recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through your hormonal shifts so you can keep your energy up and keep those cravings away. So take the next step. I use the Lumen most mornings. It's really kind of interesting. You get a little scale of whether you're going from all fats or towards carbohydrates, what you're burning. And you want to, of course, burn fat. It tells you you're doing better from the previous day. And you want to stay in that zone. Take the next step in improving your health. Go to lumen.me/DRDREW to get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/Dr. Drew for 15% off your purchase. You get that app along with it and the Lumen and a charger, and it's very interesting product. So we are here with Brad Skistimas. I hope I'm pronouncing it wrong. Skistimas. Did I do it right that time?
You got it that time.
And I was thinking about the vaccine mandates and things. And in a few minutes, about 15 minutes, you and I are going to wrap up our conversation. I'm going to bring Howard back in, a friend who we've talked to before, who would, for years has been dealing with vaccine injury. He just dutifully got his, I think it was after the first booster that he was just destroyed by this thing. And we should be counting, measuring, talking about, and coming to terms with the excesses of, let's be fair, mandate. We were in France during some of the darker hours of mandates, and the young people there were fighting back against the mandate. I thought it was really interesting. They were in the street saying, "Look, you said this illness isn't going to hurt us, and you're going to force us to put something in our body. It's not liberty. That's not the founding principle of this government." And here, we were in such a hysteria, the young people were demanding more vaccines and more lockdowns and more masking, which was, again, partly caused by people like the rock community.
Yeah, I mean, that's the situation. I have heard stories of people that have gone to concerts, gotten the shot, and they had a reaction. I've met so many of the vaccine injured over the last several years. I actually did a rally in LA called Defeat the Mandates 2 years ago. And I stood on stage with the vaccine injured behind me while I performed. And I've heard those stories, and those stories should have been at the forefront the entire time. I mean, every single one of those stories should have been shared. And the sad thing about it is those people who have been struggling are struggling the same now as they were 2-3 years ago. So they're still in the same situation. Our government has abandoned them. They listened, they trusted, and the government, and their life has been destroyed by it. And yeah, for sure. The entertainment industry has had a huge hand in that.
Where'd you grow up?
Dallas, Texas.
And how do you think you became sort of so concerned at this stage of life about, I'm imagining free speech is very important to you. I'm imagining freedom of movement is important to you. Medical freedom is important to you. How'd you get here?
Well, I was a live and let live pop songwriter for a long time. I mean, I grew up in Texas, so naturally I had a lot of conservative values growing up. But working in entertainment, you meet people across the spectrum who believe different things, and that was fine. Where I ended up, feeling the need to speak out during this time actually predates COVID by about 8 years, I guess. My oldest son had serious reactions to his early childhood shots. And so we had been down that rabbit hole for a long time and had been in the medical freedom community for a long time. So by the time COVID rolled around and it's at our doorstep and we could see the shots coming, I knew I had to stand up for my kids. I didn't want them to look back 10 years from COVID times and be like, what did you say, Dad? Did you do anything during that time? So I felt a lot of responsibility as a parent. And, like the conversation here, like I was looking around wondering why my peers weren't speaking up, my heroes, my musical heroes. And so, thinking about my kids and not seeing anybody else speak up really pushed me forward into putting on my Bob Dylan shoes, I would say, and starting to write those protest songs.
Did you feel odd doing this, or did it feel right? Because people ask questions like, where did you find the courage to do this?
Yeah. No, I mean, it felt odd because I was saying things I hadn't ever said before. I mean, I wrote pop love songs for 20 years before this, and that was sort of my lane, right? Like just singing love songs. But so I was saying, and I had 2 decades of fans that had been following me that bailed pretty quickly once I started writing these songs.
Oh, wow.
So
how'd that feel?
I was facing that. I was facing, I was losing a lot of relationships in the industry pretty fast. I was being called names that, I didn't anticipate being ever called, like dangerous, But at the same time, I had new people discovering my music saying, thank you so much for saying what you're saying. And that's what really mattered to me because it was letting me know that I wasn't alone in how I felt. And I needed to let other people know that they weren't alone. So that's how I chose to utilize my platform moving forward, is sort of letting the people who feel like I do know that they're not alone. And it's ironically opened up a ton more opportunities that I don't think I ever would have had otherwise. So, it was worth the risk to step forward and speak my mind. But there's definitely a lot of challenges that come along with that. And I'm not going to say I was the only one. There's a lot of other guys that were indie guys that spoke up. Of course, we had Eric Clapton, and we had Van Morrison speaking up, who are sort of from that original era of anti-establishment 60s music. But for the most part, you didn't see anybody in the mainstream art and culture speaking out. It was a lot of indie musicians that weren't really tethered to any contracts or anything. So, the more pushback that I got and my videos started getting censored, the more I leaned into it and it became more comfortable. And I sort of found myself as a musician that I never thought I'd really be, or at least as a songwriter I never thought I'd be. I sort of, always stood on the outside looking in at rock and roll going, that's too cool for me. I'll never be that rebellious. But as it turned out, just sort of being a dad, speaking up for your kids and not wanting the government to tell you what to do, they made you real dangerous in the 2020s, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you had a desire to kill people, according to the people that owe you an apology. Frankly, that you were a dangerous person. You were interested in killing grandma. You killed thousands of people. Yeah, that was your motivation. But what happened to people? They can't understand people's motivations. Anyway, that's kind of disgusting. But I'm going to ask this question kind of again, which was because it's kind of interesting to me. People ask a lot. Well, where'd you find the courage?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I found the courage as a dad. I mean, that's really what it came down to as a parent, knowing that, my family has already been affected by vaccines in a negative way. And I know what the weight that comes with that. And there is already a tsunami wave of regret of parents that are going to have to face that when it comes down to the COVID shot. And so it just felt like I needed to say something regardless of the pushback that I was going to get or the opportunities lost. I didn't feel like I had an option. I just had to say something.
Right. That's kind of what I thought you were going to say, because I know myself, when people ask me that question, and I've interviewed other people, it doesn't feel like courage. It just feels like doing the right thing, right? It just feels like you have to. It's like, this is like, why would you stand up for free speech? Because I have to. It's like this happened to us. We didn't ask for this, but it's just the right thing with a capital R and a capital T. And when you're doing the right thing, it doesn't really feel like courage, does it?
No, I never looked at it that way at all. And that's the sort of common thread I find when I talk to others, whether you're a musician or you're a doctor or a teacher or anybody, you just felt called to speak up. And most of us were just live and let people. We just wanted to be left alone. Yeah. It wasn't until that enormous pressure showed up on our front lawn that we felt like we really needed to do something. And so that's all it really came down to, get off my lawn. So you have to say something.
I love it. All right. Well, listen, Brad, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's a great story. I'm everything about it I love, because the way you leaned into it, the way you stood up for what was right in your eyes, and then the fact that there's so many people in the world right now that want to hear from people that have similar beliefs in them, but also who want to offer them, whether it's art or products or whatever, that they want, you're responding to them, you're responding to your audience. And I think that's great. I think that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do what's in your heart. You're supposed to do what's right, and then give them something that they like. It seems perfectly sensible to me. I don't know. Is that a radical point of view? Seems weird.
Yeah, no, I think that's the point of art. You hold a mirror back up to the world and you stand up for what you believe in. And so I think that, now's the time to do it. If you weren't doing it 3 years ago, get on the ball, because it's easier now to speak up as an artist and speak out against those things. And the more artists that do, whether you're a comedian or actor or musician, that's how we really impact culture too. We can argue about doctors and statistics, but really what it comes down to is you can change people through art. And so, that's what I'm hoping to do.
Appreciate it, Brad. I hope you'll be not be a stranger, and we'll follow you at 5 times August. Good to meet you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, you got it. So now we are going from a theoretical conversation about the vaccine injured, talk to somebody who has been vaccine injured. He's somebody I've known for many years. We actually went to the same college together. Please welcome my friend Howard, who's going to give us an update. We talked to him a couple of times. Howard, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Drew. Can we stay on that subject a little before we get to my health?
Yeah, 100%.
I had a little the Neil Young Spotify thing was an interesting wrinkle for me.
Yeah,
I was bummed when he took his music off because I'm young enough that I listen to my music mostly on Spotify, but old enough that a lot of it's Neil Young. And so it was a bummer when
you started listening to him on vinyl.
Yes, I did. And then illegally cassette recording other people's vinyl. I want to say, because I'm coming on in context, I feel like it's important to say, I think I would call myself more pro-vax than a fair number of guests that you have on the show. In some ways, you are too.
By the way,
you are always
me too. Like I said, I'm
about where you are.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold in mind that this thing can be good and have been used maybe a little bit over the top, maybe excessively,
a little recklessly.
And so I want to zero in. Yeah, I want to zero in on what the truth is. The truth is, it is true to say that it saved lives. That's true.
Right.
It's true. It was helpful.
Right.
But it's also true to say that you couldn't give informed consent. You didn't give anybody the information, or I didn't have the information to provide a proper informed consent. I'm still a little short on what I need to give people informed consent because they won't do the right studies. And so this is where people are getting hung up, I think, because it can be both good and problematic.
Yeah. And I mean, this hit me just. My timeline was I got this shot. You were right. It was the third shot of Moderna, the first booster, in early December of 2021. And for the first 5 weeks, I won't go in the long version because I talked about this with you the other time I was here. I was a mystery patient for 5 weeks. In the middle of that time, 3 weeks later, Joe Rogan recorded the podcast with Robert Malone, who I think you've had on too, right? Dr. Malone, which was the one that drove everybody crazy because that was the one that was full of misinformation and that was what was going to kill people. And after, like about a month later, so this was during the time I was a mystery patient, my doctor didn't know what I had. Nobody thought that what I had could be what I had because everybody was still being told that the vaccines were perfectly safe except for myocarditis and the other thing that you had from the J&J, right? The other
You're right. So let's be clear. So that's my reaction. I had the what was early phase coagulopathy. Thankfully, I didn't get the full syndrome, but that is evidence of that underway. And the myocarditis at that time, Howard, was being invalidated. How dare you? Maybe one, and the data was looking bad at the time, but it was being completely crushed in terms of it being a public conversation at that point.
And certainly the idea of jumping right to long haul COVID symptoms, which I was sort of saying as a joke at first, right? That somehow I have that thing that I'm reading about without ever having gotten COVID. And so I was a mystery patient. But during that time, this was recorded, and right in the and a few weeks later I listened to it, and right halfway through their overlong 3-hour conversation, at the hour and a half mark, they start talking about what I have, as if this is common knowledge. Joe Rogan knows about it. This Dr. Malone knows about it. They're talking about it like everybody knows about it. But my doctor and the several other doctors I talked to, none of them knew about it. And this is all still just
so I would say this is an important lesson here, which is when Joe Rogan starts talking about something matter-of-factly, it warrants you paying attention. That dude has his ear to the ground. So here was a case in point.
it certainly shouldn't be driven off of Spotify, which is what people were trying to do.
Right.
So politically,
That's
the thing
right.
that this really did to me was this made me a very, very passionate about freedom of speech, because that seemed to be the problem here, right? And I have a little different take from your first guest on or maybe from you
Please.
on what happened here, which is,
Go ahead.
I think, like everything else in our society, this has gotten corrupted by the blue-red color war valences here, right? And people forget.
Well, we went from this weird Trump derangement hysteria right on into COVID hysteria, right? And for all we know, Howard, like I said, they were holding the rollout of the vaccine until after the election because they didn't want Trump to get a win with the vaccine. And by the same token, we had governors like Newsom saying, I'm not going to take a vaccine that Trump developed. There was all this, remember all that? It was very, why did that have anything to do with medical management?
In the vice presidential debate, Kamala Harris says basically the same thing, sitting there with Pence. And people forget that. And then of course the vaccines come in. And again, I'm generally pro-vax. This was an important thing, I think, that did save a lot of lives and was very useful at the beginning. But I think both sides went sort of too far. Resistance to the mandates turned into the vax is evil. And acceptance of the vaccine, and we're going to help make it distributed better and get it to people, became, and we're going to force people to take it. And each side's excesses got grabbed by the other side. And Neil Young is a blue guy. And that drove him to the place of, so if they're saying things that are questioning the vaccine, this must be, that's red team stuff, and that's evil, and that's how we get there. And all of this leaves.
What's interesting, Howard?
Yeah.
Is that I have to smile at this because the independent types like Rogan, me, we get hit from both sides. We get extra. We get double whammies. You know what I mean? We get accused of being all this way or all that way. It's like you should see stuff. I still get it to this day. It's right on my Rumble rants right now, which is you push Paxlovid, you push vaccines, and then the other side's like you're a vaccine denier. It's like no, I'm none of these things. It's super crazy.
And I can go you one better on that, Drew, because my illness pisses off people on both sides. Right? Because on the red team that wants to downplay COVID, there is a subset there, a sizable subset that is convinced that long COVID doesn't exist. Right? So I am suspect to them. And on the blue side, where there is still a strong subset that wants to believe that the vaccines are absolutely flawless, the idea that that I was vaccine injured makes me suspect, right? So there's something to hate for everybody, and me too, just over my health.
Congratulations. It's wonderful to be here with you again.
I think
we've shared many.
That's
what?
That's what's drawn me to come in here with you and talk about this and to listen to what you've been doing, because you've been trying to find that sane middle by giving everybody a voice, even if they're a little too far.
Where we started.
It's good that you're doing it.
That's right. So that's how we started this whole thing. We just were like, well, let's just every day, Susan had me sit here and to give out information as I understood it, because you couldn't trust anything. I mean, everything was all over the place. And then I started learning things from people that had been silenced. And I thought, well, we got to talk to more of those people. And learn.
And then
a lot.
we did, and we got silenced.
Then we get, it's just God. But anyway, tell them a little more about your story and bring us up to the present.
Great. So the beginning was, like I say, it was the third shot of Moderna. First shot, I just had a sore arm. Second shot, I was very sick for one day, but then felt better than ever. Then a few months later, they said, you got to go. It wears off, so go get another one. And I did, and it jumped me right to what was diagnosed 5 weeks later, which I sort of jokingly guessed was long haul. And a guy, a pulmonologist, who was the head of pulmonology and intensive care at the big hospital in my part of LA, who was sort of touted to me as the local expert on COVID, surprised me by, after examining me and running some tests, saying I had vaccine-induced long-haul COVID, and that I was going to be sick for quite a long time. That it was going to be 6 to 12 months and maybe more. And it was a devastating kind of sickness. I mean, the three continuing main symptoms are severe fatigue, muscle weakness, and cognitive issues. So just to give
you
you
had some shortness of breath too, right? You had some exercise intolerance
and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
And that wasn't actually related. The shortness of breath was even just from sitting and talking. That wasn't, or even just sitting and not talking. It got very bad, and then suddenly that lifted. But the three main ones that have lingered in different forms, and at their worst, the fatigue meant 6 or 7 naps a day. And muscle weakness meant that I went from being a guy who could walk an hour in the morning. And I did this every day. This was my neurotic way of dealing with COVID. I walked an hour in the morning, did like 20 minutes of upper body strength in the afternoon, and then an hour on the bike every single day. And suddenly I could barely, shuffle to the corner and back, a little 5-10 minute walk. And cognitive issues, the low point to that was, I remember once opening a bank statement and just not knowing what you do with this, and just sitting there and looking at this, figuring out, trying to remember how to balance a checkbook, or even that I'm supposed to do that with this. So this was all pretty severe. It gradually got better. I tried a bunch of things. The one thing that made a difference with the cognitive issues, this was the one thing that has really helped, is stimulants, as I take a little Ritalin every morning. And at about a year, I was describing myself as 80 to 90% recovered. I sort of plateaued there, which was a little frustrating because, I just couldn't get the rest of the way healthy. Then I had an unrelated minor surgery where they put me out with propofol for 15 minutes. And it knocked me all the way back to square one, which was tremendously disheartening. I got kind of angry. We'll come back to this because we just talked about my mental health, which is much better than it was when I came to see you here a year ago. But I was pretty angry and frustrated then. Once again, started recovering slowly. About 6 months after that, so almost 2 months after the shot that did me in, I, for the first time, got actual COVID, got the virus. And that again knocked me all the way back to square one. And by the way, how this is described by my doctors is that basically it drove my immune system haywire. That's the word that keeps coming
whatever
up.
that means. Yeah, whatever
Just
that means.
Oversensitive, overactive, and we test my COVID antibodies every 4 months. And for this entire time, and still as of last week, it's too high. They're too high to measure. So my body is probably
too high. Too many to measure. So you're still producing spike.
So I'm still producing
exactly. Some nattokinase.
Exactly.
Oh boy. Wow.
So that's
And that's what people have speculated about what this is. I mean, that's been the big speculation, is that it's a spikeopathy, that some people just keep producing the spike. And we need to really just document that phenomenon. If you, Dr. We're going to put him in. Yeah.
DrDrew.com/TWC.
Well, Peter McCullough has some protocols for exactly this. He was telling me about them. And if, maybe I'll give you an email to talk to him. But he has real specific things he does, and he says he has great results with. But, well, how are you now? If you're well now, I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, but still, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, but still.
Well, it's never well. I mean, what I'd say. So the good news is that in between the setbacks, I improve.
Mm-hmm.
I always get better, and I know how. There are people, and I'm mostly in touch with people in groups online, long haul and normal long haul and vaccine, long vax, as they sometimes call it. And some people don't get better. Some people, I think, try to exercise too much. I really designed a thing for myself that worked, which was just to start out incredibly slowly and to increase my exercise incredibly slowly, to where I could get to where I could walk for an hour. And once that was comfortable at whatever, the best speed I could do at that point, I'd add the bike, 1 minute on the bike. And then, when that got comfortable, 2 minutes and so on. I know even when I get knocked backwards that I can get better. That's the good thing. So the negatives, there are sort of four flavors of them. The first is that even though I do always get better, and that's great to be able to do 22 minutes on the bike when I did 21 yesterday, I do keep getting these setbacks. I had the two big ones I mentioned, one from the propofol, one from the COVID virus, but I've had lesser setbacks, once from half a glass of wine. It was the only time I've had alcohol. That felt like it knocked my walking and everything else measurable back about 2 months worth. Small head colds will do the same thing to me. Again, it just stirs up my immune system again. Anything that does that. And a couple of weeks ago, just a terrible stress day. My wife had a medical situation where we ended up taking her to the emergency room, and she was hospitalized. And I went a couple of days with almost no sleep and such. And she's doing much better. But the third day of that, I could barely walk. And the cognitive setback from that is still lingering. So that's one thing, is that there are always these setbacks. The second one is that, go ahead, do you want to say something, Drew?
Well, I was going to say, I had long COVID from COVID, and it's all so familiar to me. I mean, that's all the way I felt. I was like a couple of months like that, maybe 3 months, and I lie down in this
You had
place.
to lay down after a show.
Oh, all the time. I had to lay down constantly. I wouldn't nap, but I'd have to lie down. And there was a place on our patio where I spent most of my day on this couch. And I lie there now and I think, God, I spent a lot of time here. And
the first 8 months of this, first 8 months, 8 months of this, I basically watched TV. I mean, I would drag myself up to do whatever really my exercise regimen was, but this was a completely debilitating illness. And then to have that happen again, 15 months in, when I was just expecting that I was going to continue getting better. So then the second issue is, I know I can always get better, but the jury's out about whether I'll ever get fully well. Right. I mean, I ran into that 80 to 90% ceiling before. And, is that, again, you follow people, read people talking about these things online. A permanent ceiling, or so far ceiling, seems a common thing, but some people have gotten all the way better. The third thing is, just because of what you just described and everything else around this, it's kind of a small life. It's a happy life. But I don't go very many places. The way my eyes pick up things and transmit the information to my brain is a little untrustworthy sometimes. I'll go for a walk, and a car will pull out of a driveway, and I'll stop, and then I'll realize it's parked and there's no one in it. So I don't drive on freeways, right? Because this all feels safe if I'm paying attention, in the neighborhood, but not at 60, 70 miles an hour. And then the last problem go ahead.
You said you were angry at the last setback. Are you angry at having having had the booster?
Well, let me get back to that. So the fourth thing is the thing that I mentioned to you, is that it's starting to affect my other medical care. Right, because just being the fact that propofol either will or at least may knock me all the way back again has, deterred other choices. And we didn't, I mean, I had a couple of oral surgeries this year, for example, that I did awake that wouldn't have been awake otherwise. Things like that. And then there are things that I'm just avoiding. So so that's the. I wasn't angry about it until after the setback. And I think I talked about this a little when I was here with you before, that there were a couple of things. One was the revelation that came out shortly after that, through the Twitter files, what Matt Taibbi found in there, that the government and Stanford University and the drug companies had this thing called the Virality Project, which was built to tamp down vaccine hesitancy, anything that would contribute to vaccine hesitancy, whether true or not, right?
Yes.
So when I looked back at what happened with me, remember I said I had the second shot made me very sick for a day. The messaging that followed that was, you get sick for a day or two, no matter how sick, if you bounce back, this is good news. This is good for you. This means that your body's creating a lot of antibodies. So the shot's really working for you. So not only don't worry about it, you're doing great. So then when they said to me a few months later, and you need to take more, I didn't think twice about it, but that third shot overdosed me. And now I look back and I think when they were saying that about this works for you, I think they were talking out of their butts. I don't think they knew that that was true at all. I think that that was,
of course not. They didn't know.
People are getting sick, so let's tell them it's good, you know. And
I mean that's it's a way to think about what is happening. Like so we look at vaccines, we go, we want the immune system to be stimulated and people have a robust response. That's a good thing to have a robust response. We don't know what the hell it meant for that vaccine or this new mRNA platform. That's what was false. It was like we used to, I mean, when people would get reactions, we would just go, all right, you know, it's some people have a more robust reaction than others, and that's that. But the idea that it's pathologizing, it's creating a syndrome that is damaging the individual, you don't really get that from the old traditional vaccine platforms. This, not an adult anyway, not like this. I mean, you can have various kinds of reactions. And Caleb was asking if myasthenia has been associated with it. I mean, almost every kind of autoimmune syndrome has been associated with things that activate the immune system, like vaccines, right? So it's something called transverse myelitis. Myasthenia, I suppose, is in there. I just have not seen it. I've not seen it specifically with this vaccine, but now everything's being claimed with this vaccine. You know, so we, like Howard was saying, things go from one side of the boat to the other. Transverse myelitis, myasthenia, Guillain-Barré, that's the sort of dreaded syndrome, which is this ascending motor polyneuropathy where you end up on a breathing machine. So that's terrible. But this particular syndrome that Howard has, which is essentially a long COVID, they were denying. And at the time they were denying it, I was hearing from Dr. Yogendra, who you and I were discussing, an anesthesiologist that works for COVID long haulers. Howard and I have been communicating with him regarding Howard's propofol reaction. He was telling me that most of his patients at the time were from long vax. That's mostly what he was seeing. And that the long COVID seemed to resolve while the long vax did not. Isn't that interesting?
And they did lie about it for a long time. So the CDC website, for 2 years after I was sick, they finally changed it. But for a very long time, it would say that the vaccines are completely safe except for 4 possibilities, right? The one you had, the myocarditis, Guillain-Barré, which you just mentioned, and what's the thing anybody can, anaphylaxis. Right, that those were the only things the serious things that could happen. So they were lying about me. You know, Science Magazine wrote about this a fair bit, or not a fair bit. They did 2 good-sized articles, and in the second one, they talked to a dozen researchers, scientists, Ministry of Health people from around the world, all of whom were acknowledging that this was a syndrome that they were seeing. The only person in that article who said, "Well, it's really hard to tie this to the vaccine," was somebody from the FDA. You know, so they were working very hard to say that this wasn't. And so I did feel my government lying to me about my own illness, which I think were words that your last guest said, actually, that you know, hit a chord. But I am in a much better place, though. So.
And then Caleb asked how the Ritalin helps. I don't think we know. I mean, Ritalin has a very specific kind of activity in the brain. My suspicion is, Caleb, that you get so desperate with some of the long haul patients that you just, and that when they complain about fatigue and fog, you just try stuff to try to help them. And I'm sure somebody tried Ritalin and had a good response and then wrote about it. And that's how Howard's doctor found out.
I want some of that.
I'm sure you do. But the question, Howard, is
for health.
What do we do about this? What do you? Well,
yes.
Well, she's got ADD, so she always wants to use a psychostimulant. I'm nervous about psychostimulants. That's my thing. But what do you think we should do about all this?
As a society, or as an individual, or
I don't know. As individuals, should we be? Other than talking about it and doing programming around it, I mean, is there I don't know. I feel kind of helpless against it. One of the thoughts in my head is, what's wrong with my profession? That we're not all standing up going, what's going on here? Why don't we systematically go at this?
Well, okay, so here again, I'm going to go back to the thing that I was saying about the sort of red-blue derangement, that we talked about this very briefly. I'm glad we're getting a chance to again, because I sent it to you to make sure you saw Dr. Redfield, right, who talked about this, that interview he did with Chris Cuomo, where he's running a long-haul clinic. Yep. He says 10% on that, he's very pro-vax, right, proud of Warp Speed. One of the developers, he says, of the mRNA vaccine, says 10% of the patients he has at the long haul clinic are vaccine long haul. And that for none of his patients does he recommend the mRNA vaccines anymore. That now that we have the traditional protein vaccines for this, right, that the Novavax is what he is now taking himself and using.
Okay,
now
there's also
here's what bothered me.
Covaxin. Yeah. Ahead.
But here's what bothered me. I mean, what bothered me is that you would think that's big news. You would think that the former head of the CDC, one of the proponents of that, coming out and saying all this would be something that would get picked up. It got no attention at all because, like you, like me, there was something for everybody to hate there. Right? Because, for the red team, oh yeah, he's one of the vaccine guys and he's still giving vaccines. For the blue team, wait a minute, he's saying those vaccines aren't perfect. And so I really believe that's why only, the sort of aggressive middle, which is a thing Chris Cuomo's trying to do now, which is why he had him on. I think that's the only place you'll see that. And so it's frustrating. It's getting lost in that. I don't know you probably know more than I do about whether there's adequate funding for researching long COVID, period.
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of research if they have interest. The problem is that whenever you look at long haul, the vaccine gets implicated and then they pull back. There's a new thing going around. Dr. Joseph Fryman, who's really been at the forefront of asking the right questions about the vaccine. Where it's a document that I'm probably going to called The Hope, a New Hope or something. Caleb, look that up. Fryman, just look up Fryman Hope. I'm sure there's a big page for it. And I think I'm going to sign this document that's advocating for stopping the mRNA platform for the time being until it can be properly researched, and that just makes perfect sense to me. And that we also remain open-minded and take a good look at these things and do the proper research and take our time and just as we have always done things throughout human history, at least American history, as it pertains to medicine. So I'm hoping we restore some sanity. There's a lot of, on the red team, there's a lot of winds blowing about cancers and excess deaths and stuff. And I don't know if any of that is true or not. We haven't done the data. We haven't done the research to really examine that. It might quite be true. It might be true. There might be some really serious stuff coming our way. I don't know. And so I'm disturbed by all of this. I'm disturbed by all. Did you find that COVID? Excuse me.
Yeah,
did you find that, Caleb?
It's called the Hope Accord from Dr. Joseph Fryman.
Hope Accord, yeah.
The Hope Accord.
There it is. Hope Accord. And I think Fryman's coming on, or somebody's coming on soon to go review it with me and on this program. And I will probably end up signing it live on the air right there. But it seems like a movement in the right direction. And yes, this is something I've been asking for quite some time, which is, okay, if we have to take vaccines, why aren't we taking Novavax? And by the way, Novavax has some long COVID associated with it as well. That's why I'm advocating a little more strongly something called Covaxin, which is a whole viral vaccine, not just a spike protein. It's the nucleocapsid. And there's so many other structures that we could aim our immune system at in that virus that is not associated with the pathology of the illness, which is the spike protein itself seems to be the most pathogenic piece of the virus. And to the fact that we directed and then demanded that we continue to direct all vaccines at that spike protein, and the production of that spike protein is problematic for me. It's problematic.
And Drew, why do you think this hasn't been directed toward those safer vaccines?
I think it's the red team, blue team thing again. And there may be some money, follow the money involved with it, true. I don't know. I really don't know. I no one has answered that question for me. There are, if we have to take the vaccines, maybe they can't get those vaccines in adequate supplies or something. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But Howard, I got to wrap things up here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I say one more thing though? Because I do have
Of course,
something that
of
I
course.
want to say to people, anybody who's suffering this, because I have more to say on how to get through it yourself, right? And one thing I found very useful. Did you ever have Amanda Knox on any of your shows?
Soon.
You know, I'm supposed to, Caleb, what's going on with that? I'm supposed to do her show.
We're working on
actually.
it, and then she had to go back overseas
Yeah.
for that stupid extra extension of the trial. But we're working on it. Yeah.
Well, she's done some really interesting work since since her tribulations on resilience, and she had a podcast series on Sam Harris's meditation platform, which I listened to, and I got a lot out of. And the one-liner that I loved the most that I just want to share. This is the main reason I said yes to coming on when you asked, is I want to share this.
Good.
Because she kept having that false hope, right? She kept having that, oh, we're going to get you out, and then it would fall through, and she was still stuck in prison.
Yeah.
And obviously that struck a chord with my setbacks, that unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And the thing she said she learned was stop looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. Work with the light that you have. And I love that. That has been so useful for me because I can do some work every day. I can't do the quality and quantity that I used to, but with a novel, if you write one paragraph at the top of your game, it's there forever. So if it takes longer to get the book where I want it, I can do it. And I can keep exercising and I can
write
keep
about that.
incrementally. I probably will. If I finish the book I'm writing now, it'll just take me longer.
Do me
to
one
get
quick
to
favor, though. Before I let you go, tell Susan, listen to this story about your father and when you decided to be an English major. Can you tell? Would you mind telling that story?
Oh, yeah, I can tell that. Yeah, that's funny. So my father was a CPA. My father was up from poverty and went the very straight arrow route. And was very proud that I got into, and he was able to send me to Amherst, where you went just before me. And when I came home, Thanksgiving of freshman year, and said, "Pop, I want to be an English major," he hit the ceiling. He said, "What are you going to do? Open an English store and sell words?" It was very, that was like that I wanted to be a writer was like one step up from actor, which was one step up from bum. And we fought all the way through college. I did major in English. I backed into a job at an ad agency, actually. So I actually was a professional writer from, graduation on, in a way. And then 5 years after that, got my first break in Hollywood, came out, wrote one script, and got offered one thing after another immediately, like in the first few weeks. And I called my dad and I said, "Pops, you're not going to believe what words are going for out here." and it was a 9-year callback, and he knew exactly what I was calling it back to, and he laughed so hard. And then I had to incorporate, as everybody does here, to shield money from the government, which is also a racket. I think that socialist in me comes out against that, but I did it because I'd be a fool not to. And I incorporated and still am the English store incorporated. And my dad, being a CPA, did the tax returns for the English store for years, and would tell the story to anybody who'd listen. So to his skepticism, but it's a great story. And the last thing is that then my son, who went to Hampshire, said, "I want to study philosophy." And I said, "That's Grandpa's revenge right there."
So you got to title one of your books, Grandpa's Revenge. But thank you for being so generous with your words today. I know you actually have a word store that you make your living with, and we appreciate it. And I think about you all the time. I'll never forget that story about your dad as long as I live. I swear to God, it's just so funny. And I appreciate it, and I hope you're well. I hope your wife is well. I'd hate to hear that she had a medical thing. It sounds like it's okay now. And I hope everyone. Do you want people to follow you anywhere? People have any questions or follow up?
No,
or is there somewhere on X or anything?
when I finish this book, I'll come back. We'll use my last name too, and then we'll do all that stuff.
Okay.
That gives me one more reason to finish.
All right, Howard, talk soon.
Okay, take care, Drew.
You got it.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yes, I love it here on the Restream. Dr. Drew is promoting deadly vaccines. Is that what I've been doing this
Yeah,
last
you
promoting deadly vaccines. Okay. That's
I mean,
what I've been
you
doing.
said the word Paxlovid, so I make $1 every time you say Paxlovid.
Did I say, I meant Covaxin. Did I say Paxlovid?
That's what they're saying in the chat.
No.
Is they're saying you get paid every time you say the word Paxlovid.
No.
So
No,
I lost $1.
You did it.
I am against Paxlovid being used for young people. I've used it with very elderly people who are at high risk of complications. To extremely, very beneficial for some very complicated patients. And whatever this variant is going around, these particular variants, fever, prostration, feel really bad, and that goes away. It's done in 12 to 24 hours with the medication. And in situations where it's dangerous, I use it. There are other things to be done. Get the emergency kit. You make your own decisions about this with either your doctor or the wellness company with one of the backup with the telehealth.
drdrew.com/TWC.
I give you full authority to go forward and the
stock up today.
Flirt variants, people
and
are
also
saying.
you can get the nattokinase, Dr. McCullough's spike protein supplement. It's healthy
I've had
and
long talks to them about it.
can
He's
be
having
very
great
helpful.
results. Yeah. And he is using it for 6 to 12 months on average for people. And I really want to put Howard together.
They also have Zelenko Z-Stack there if you want to prevent getting COVID.
Oh,
or
another thing, I
take care of
promote
yourself.
AZT. Yeah, AZT. That's a drug we use all the time now. That's way to go there, Rogel E. What's that, Susan?
Whatever.
Finish up what you were saying? I'm sorry.
We're supporting healthy living, and
Freedom.
Drew's a doctor.
Freedom.
If somebody needs it, it's not one size fits all.
No, we're trying to be as accurate and careful as possible. But one of the things I'm totally committed to now is empowering you in your healthcare to do as you please with proper supervision. You need a little bit of supervision here and there. But
And COVID's around. It's around right now.
Oh yeah, big time.
People are getting
big time, big time, big time. And so it's going to be around forever. It's in the environment now. It's endemic, and that's that. Susan, I need you to head over there and put my thing up.
I get to put your thing up.
Thank you. Let's put the upcoming guests on the screen here. We have Dave Rubin in studio tomorrow. It should be fun. We're going to talk about this crazy dinner that he held. Michael Fairclough early on Thursday at noon Pacific time. He is a headmaster of a school in England, in the UK, who has some really interesting ideas about child rearing and some very strong feedback on lockdowns. Same day, July 11th, which is Thursday, Susan has her calling out program at 3. She'll take my spot. As you see, Harvey Reish coming back, Dave Smith coming back, but Batya Ungar Sargon with Corey DeAngelis. A lot of interesting guests, and there's poor Emily Barsh. I've been throwing her guest after guest after guest and saying, I need this. I got to talk to this guy. I got to talk to this guy. There's a lot of interesting people on deck. So stay with us. Nope, that's not what I think I'm supposed to be doing, is it? We were at the beach, and we let's see what that says here. Nope, that's not what I'm supposed to be reading at all.
Read it.
Susan, I'm supposed to be doing My Pillow?
Yes.
Yes, it's supposed to be My Pillow.
It is.
Oh my gosh. So all right, she put some Paleo Valley stuff. Okay, look, I use Paleo Valley all the time. I eat the beef sticks. I love the venison best. I just love them. I eat them all the time. And the bone broth, of course, we have on a daily basis, the chocolate. And now we've got new beach towels and Susan's favorite plush white hotel quality bath sheets from Mike Lindell's employee-owned MyPillow. Prices are low, and with my discount code Drew, not Dr. Drew, at checkout, they are with that code they are ridiculously low, 50% off. Use promo code Dr. Oh, it says Dr. Drew at checkout now.
No, it's Drew.
Okay, use promo code Drew at checkout for access to these crazy deals on towels and so much more. I guess Dr. Drew also works at mystore.com.
Yes.
Nope. Susan says Drew. It's just Drew. Which is it, Caleb?
They
Both
work. They both work. But wow, this is a really great ad read. Great going here.
I know it's all over the place.
I didn't write
Here's
it.
what you should let me
Ask
do.
Emily why
Look,
she's.
Is this
she
a
has to do
paleo
that.
ad or is
Here's
it for
reality.
MyPillow?
let me tell you, I know. That's why I was so confused. Let me tell you reality.
Not my fault.
Of course, I use lots of Paleo Valley products. They're carefully sourced. They're fermented. They're delicious. They're great snacks. They're only 70 calories or 50 calories, some of them. And they are packed with protein and nutrients. So guess what? I use them all the time. And the bone broth has tons of collagen, and we take that every day.
Helps your hair and skins and nails.
We like it. And we use the tallow. We use all the products.
And it tastes good. It's not like when you hear bone broth, you think, oh, chicken broth. But it's
not the point of
there's
today.
no flavor like that. It's just
it's just
collagen
chocolate.
and
No,
goodness.
I'd mix it in water sometimes, like chocolate milk.
Yeah.
But the MyPillow, they have been delightful with us. It's an employee-owned company. These people are so happy to be of service to you. And Susan got the bath towels, and one day she came downstairs. She goes,
"Where do we get these bath towels?"
I go, MyPillow. She goes, they're like hotel towels. They're
They
crazy.
are $25 or something. $19. Like,
All right, and so
It's
use
like a
the
$70
code.
towel.
Use the code. It's Drew. Use that code, mypillow.com/Dr. Drew. Promo code.
So I
is
bought
Drew.
a set of 6.
So you'll be happy like Susan is. And they've got great sheets. They've got all kinds of stuff.
And I use code Drew. It really helps. It's like 50% off.
And so it is really nice to support those guys too. They just such a lovely community. When you go to, if you have any customer service needs, call them. They are just happy to be of help.
Do you ever like get embarrassed with your towels? You know, it's like we have those raggedy towels. Sometimes
You
I
ever
just
get embarrassed with your towels? It's like
yeah.
Roseanne
Wasn't that
here.
like on Curb Your Enthusiasm? And he's like, "You got those ugly towels," and he's like, "My towels aren't ugly. I have those too." So now that I have my hotel style MyPillow towels, I'm so happy.
Enough. We're boring people to death here. Let me look at the restream, see what you guys are talking about.
Fluffy and white.
I know what you guys are talking about there, and so many things you're saying about humanity being in trouble. Let's see. YouTube. Doctors possibly know. I'd rather not tell me that blame it almost myself. Yep, for sure. All right. So you guys are sort of ranting on a number of different things here. We do try to keep up on what you're saying. In the
Somebody
restream.
likes the MyPillow Giza sheets. Yeah, I got the Giza pillowcases too, because I never have enough pillowcases.
Okay.
And a bunch of
A lot
washcloths.
of Disney complaints here.
I'm buying it. I'm embarrassed to ask for free stuff.
Dexter's
so I'm paying
Lab wants us to stop ignoring communist Chinese influence. Susan?
Wait, excuse me?
There you go. See, people don't listen to us. They don't listen.
I've been talking about that.
Oh,
since
it says
Drew.
we promote so much, YouTube promotes so much communist Chinese propaganda. Okay, well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And there's some AI stuff out there saying, with Drew in it, that selling something called a nose rocket, which is not him. And there's nothing you can do about it because it's all Chinese AI. Beautiful. They're using his. And I've heard like the rice ad where they say, eat rice before bed, and it's Dr. Phil or Dr. Oz's voice. Don't do it.
All right.
It's a communist plot.
We're going to wrap this thing up. We appreciate Howard for giving us an update. Appreciate Brad for coming by and talking about his music and his freedom fighting. And tomorrow, the great Dave Rubin, he held another one of his soirees last night. I'm waiting for him to get into it and tell you all about it. So be here at 3 o'clock Pacific time.
Thank you, Andy.
Right here. Don't forget to subscribe on Rumble.
Thank you, Andy, for buying the towels.
Appreciate it. See you soon.
Andy S.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.